Hello, and welcome to this segment of Experts on Tap. I'm your presenter, Rufus Handsome, and I'm a technology advocate for InSource Solutions. In this segment, we'll be working with the AVEVA Edge HMI, and we're going to introduce you into the concept of interacting with databases using grid objects, .NET controls, and scripting. To get us started, we're going to do some database pre-work. First, we're going to view the actual database beforehand to get some critical information. Then we're going to verify that the client connector is properly installed, and we're going to verify database connectivity. And then we'll get into the real work. We're going to put all the pieces together. We're going to select the data grid object, we're going to choose the appropriate .NET control, and we're going to work with some scripts to tie it all together. So with that, let's get started. Now, I'm connected to my remote machine, and the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my database. Now, the database that I'm going to be utilizing in this demonstration is called MySQL, and it is widely available on the internet. And with like any database software, it gives you the option of installing a management tool or management interface. And through this management interface, we're able to verify that we're connecting to the correct database, and the database actually exists. In this case, it's called SCADA DB, and we're going to look for a specific table, and it's called Total System. Now, in this database and table, there are 4 columns that we are interested in. Actually 5 columns: timestamp, total array power, total amps, total battery power, and total kilowatt hours produced. Now, looking at this database, there are certain things or key pieces of information we need to see. Okay, obviously we need to know what tables are available, what, in accordance with the table, what columns are available, and also the timestamp information and how it's configured. As you can see here, the configuration is year, month, day, separated by hyphens, and the time, hour, which is a 20. You can see that it is in 24-hour period. So it is 20, 53, and 29, meaning hour, minute, seconds, separated by a colon. Now, this is the proper querying format. This is what the database accepts. This is a standard select statement, essentially saying select from this particular database, from this particular table, where the timestamp or the data within the timestamp column is greater than or equal to some date and time. And then you have the and then another timestamp. And then the data within that timestamp column is less than or equal to some date and time. Again, key point is this is the format that the database is looking for. So we have to kind of focus on that and keep all of this in mind. This will be our test query to make sure everything is working properly. So we know we can connect to the database, at least from our management tool, and we can see stuff in the database. So let's minimize this, and the next thing that we need to check is just to make sure that the client connector is installed properly, and we will use the ODBC Data Source Administration tool to do that. Now, I open up the ODBC Data Source Administrator. In this case, I'm looking at the 32-bit version, and I'm going to go to the System DSN, which is Data Source Name. And note that I do have a 64-bit connector data source name through the connector installed, and I have a 32-bit connector and a data source associated with it as well. So I'll highlight this 32-bit version. I'll click on Configure, and I can see that this is my data source name, and this is the actual database that I will be connecting to. And this is the username and password, and I will be connecting to the SCADA DB database. So let's test it to make sure it's okay. Okay, so that lets us know that the connection is okay, and the data source information is okay as well. And so we can just click OK to that, close it out, and now we can start working on our application. We'll open up our application, or specifically the development environment. I've taken a liberty of creating an external database screen for us to work with. I have an exit button because we're going to be doing a lot of testing. But before putting any elements on the screen, let's first take a look at the project tags. Now, I've also taken the liberty of creating project tags that reflect the activities what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect to a database, and I need to format the date time parameters in a certain way. So I need to separate each element into a tag. So I'm going to have a start time, and I'm going to have an end time, or start date and an end date. So I need tags to reflect that. So I have created some string tags. I have a start year, start month, start day. Again, it coincides to what my database expects. A start hour, minutes, seconds, and the corresponding in year, in month, in day, in hour, in minutes, and in seconds. Now, once I put all of this information together, I'm going to concatenate. Basically, I'm going to put all of these elements together into one string or one statement, and I'm going to store that inside of these two tags called the start date time. This is essentially my properly formatted date time string information, and this will store my properly formatted end date. Okay, so I have my start date and my end date. So the final information will be stored here. Now, I also created a Boolean tag to work with the grid object. It's just going to be a toggle tag, and it will trigger the grid object to reload or requery the information the database based on the information I put into the start date time and the end date time. I also created a query tag. And this is a string tag that this will actually hold the actual query string itself. Now let's move on to the screen, and let's start putting some elements on the screen. So we'll click on the draw item in the ribbon menu, and the first thing that we're going to put on our screen is the .NET controls that reflect the start and end time. So I'll click over here under libraries, and I will go to .NET control, and it will bring up the .NET Framework components that are installed that are available through the operating system. So I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to look for something called Date Time Picker. So I'll go ahead and select it. Say OK, and it's now on my screen. And I'll expand that. Now, if you look at it, this date does not coincide with what my database expects, so I've got to modify it. So I'll double click on it, and it'll bring up the object properties. And the first thing I'm going to modify is the properties page. And I'm going to look for something like this as this custom format. So I know by Googling what this .NET control expects. So this represents the year. Remember the dash. This is the month. This is the day. And now I need to do the hour. But since it's in 24-hour format, the H's here have to be capitalized. And there's the colon. And I need the minutes, colon, and the seconds. Now this is my custom format. Now I also have to tell the .NET control, as opposed to using the long format, which is by default, I want it to use the custom format. So now it's ready. So I click on close, and if I look at it, now I can see the format that my database actually expects. Now let's create the members. Now here in these properties, this is where I'm going to put the tags to store the actual values that are chosen through the tag picker. So the first one is year. So I'll just go ahead and click on the ellipses button here, and since this is my start time, I'll scroll on down and I will find start year. And then I will just simply slowly go up here, the items here, and put them in the appropriate spots. Like, let's see, not there. It should be value second. That's what I'm looking for. So I'll go down here to start, and I'll find seconds. and do the same thing for month and the rest of them. So this one is month, minute, okay, let's start minutes. And it's best to, take your time, so and do it right the first time. There's hour, so not end hour but start hour. Scroll up and here is day. Let's scroll up to make sure we get everything. And I believe that does it. So I'll take one more scroll down just to make certain. There's day, there's hour, there's minutes, there's month, there's seconds, and finally at the very bottom there is year. Alright, that takes care of that one. Now, just so that I won't have to recreate the wheel, I'll just simply copy this and paste it, and now I'll bring in my end .NET control time picker here. So I don't have to mess with the property pages, so I'll just simply go to members, scroll on down, and everywhere it says start, I'll just replace it with end. So let's start seconds, so we'll just make it end seconds. Again, I do want to stress attention to detail is very important. It's important to get it right the first time, so take your time. Don't be in such a rush. End hour. And by doing it this way and taking your time, it will save you hours of troubleshooting. Just to make certain that there is no more there. So there's in year, we have our year, seconds, month, minutes, hour, day, and that should do it. And so I'll say OK, and so that should take care of that one. And I do need to put a button object here just so that I can have my reload function. And it is a command button, and it's just going to be a toggle, and we'll just toggle this reload Boolean tag. Alright, and now the next thing that we need to do is put in our grid object. And let's configure it. First thing is we need to select the data source. In this case, it's a database. Let's go ahead and configure the data source settings. We're not going to use the primary project database, so we'll click on the connection string, go to connection, and we will select our MySQL data source name, and the initial catalog is the SCADA DB. Test the connection, successful, and we'll say OK. Now down here underneath the table, let's find the correct table that we're going to be working with. It's called Total System, and we say OK. Now let's do our columns. Now for the labels, you can label it pretty much anything you want. But we'll be specific here. So the first label for the first we want is timestamp. The second one is array power. The third one is amperage. And the fourth one is battery power. And the last one is kilowatt hours produced. So we have our 5 columns, and for the fields, now we've got to be specific here. So I'm just simply going to go to my database management tool. I'm going to copy the field name, and I'm just simply going to paste all the way down. This way I don't make any mistakes. Now, if you don't have this tool, obviously you'll have to type it in. But anything that makes your job easier, I definitely recommend you do. And definitely copy and paste is your friend. So I've copied and pasted all of the correct fields, and I verify I'm good to go. I'll just simply say OK, and I'm good there. Now the next thing is to go to the Advanced tab and to type in my condition, and I'm going to store my query inside of that that tag I mentioned, that string tag called query. And I'm also going to specify my reload, or just think of this as the requery tag, or the trigger to requery the database, and making sure that I'm putting my tag or my string tag inside of these curly braces. So I say OK, and that should be OK again. Now, because I like to do troubleshooting or to make sure I have some type of diagnostics, I need to know exactly what query I'm going to be running. So I'm going to put in something called current query. And I'll put in some symbols here that will contain my query information. And let's tie it to that query string there, or string tag. Now, what we need to do the concatenation to put this information inside of the query string here, we need to create a script to do that. So, and I've taken the liberty of already creating this script, and it's called datetime, and it is set to run. I have a Boolean tag called run, and I set it to equal 1. So it will always equal 1, so this script will always be running. So essentially I have 3 items in my script. The first one is to concatenate all of these individual elements of the choice of the datetime, of the start datetime picker, and put it into the start datetime tag. The same with the end datetime tag. As you notice here, each element plus the little dash it will format this the value inside of these 2 tags specifically in such a way that my database can use it. Now, once the values are inside of these tags, then I could use this particular portion of script to formulate or create my actual query. And notice that this query is very similar to the query that we saw in my database management tool. So it will be stored inside of this query string. Now, once that's done, it's all good to go. I make sure I save everything. And now let's run our project. So it'll start up, and the next thing I need to do is I will go here to my database settings, and I need some good data. So let's see. So at May 19th, 2020, at this time, okay, and that time I should get similar settings or similar information that that's in this particular query. So let's head back. And I did some testing earlier, so you can look and see that it's already prepped for something. So let's go in and let's pick the correct year and the date. And 20, it's like 53, and 21 or something like that. And let's do the same thing on the end date. Let's pick the correct year. May, and this time it's the May 20th, and 080700, and let's reload. Okay, now it shows that I have some data there, and you can see that as far as the current query, this is what's being executed right here, and this is exactly what my database is looking for. Now let's modify this a little bit to see if I can get even more data, and just say reload. You notice that the end date did change, and I say reload, and as you can see, I have more data. Now that concludes this brief demonstration of how to utilize the grid object to interact with databases using the AVEVA Edge software, also utilizing the .NET controls and scripting. Now let's see, let's go back here and let's show you the finishing information here. Again, I want to thank you for your time. I do have a couple of questions. Let's see here. All right, what types of databases can I connect to? Typically, databases that you can connect to, using standard means like ODBC, any ODBC compliant database, MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Oracle, various ERP databases and such. So I mean, if you can connect to it with a standard SQL client, then you can connect to it with AVEVA Edge. But anyway, thank you again for your time, and have a great day.